What's going on, guys? Spikezillion here, and today we're going to be talking about Phantasm Spiral. This is a deck that I wanted to show off for this format because I actually thought it was genuinely interesting. I figured that this deck actually could be playable by a lot of different people this format, people that are playing trap tricks and they kind of want to delve into the more dirtier, darker side of Yu-Gi-Oh! This is for you, my friend. This is probably the only stun deck that I've practically played. I mean, obviously, Harpy Shaddolls is kind of more of a stun or control deck than, what other Harpy decks would be like. So I suppose my specialty has become more of a stun control type deal. But I promise you, I've never delved this far into the deep end of stun, but this deck quite does it very, very well. I have some interesting choices in here, so there might be some things that people will disagree with or agree with. Who knows? You can let me know in the comments below if you're really triggered by this list. But I mean, I think this is a really good list. There's a number of different things to note before we even get into it. And those notes would be, one, you really want the field spell very badly. So that is the number one thing we have at 3, obviously, in addition to 3 different ways to search it. And I went with one of each, and there is a good reason for that. So we have Pacifis, of course, the Phantasm City. So basically what this card says is that it's treated as Umi. You can't special or normal effect monsters that turn you activate either of the card's effects, even if this card leaves the field. Once per turn, which is soft once. If you normal summon or special summon exactly one normal monster, which can include a token, and no other monsters, you can add a Phantasm Spiral card from your deck to your hand, so you can search a Phantasm Spiral card. Also, if your opponent, this is a second effect, if your opponent activates literally any effect basically ever, except during the damage step, and you control no tokens, you can summon a token. So basically, that second effect is infinite, and effectively, if your opponent Raigekis your token, or Raigekis your board, you can activate this field spell's effect to summon a token. Then when that token is summoned, you can search. Now, again, it's soft once for the search, which means that if I replace the field spell with another version of the field spell, it'll still do yet another search, which is incredibly powerful, because your opponent may feel the need to try to pop it while the search is happening, thinking that it's hard once, because they don't read cards, Yu-Gi-Oh! Players don't read, and then he can just activate another one, and then do it again later down the line, because surely your opponent will try to pop the token while it's trying to swing at your opponent. There's also some equip spells that I think are worth playing, and I play them at 2 personally. And the reason I do is because this is the way to enable an OTK during the game. Once you've run your opponent out of resources and they've kind of exhausted everything, mind you, this is turn 2 when they've exhausted everything. So you need a really good crackback on turn 3, and hopefully you'll have that by being able to search once for at least, I think it's Spiral Crash you want. Yeah, for the most part, Spiral Crash is quite good. Although, most of the time I feel like you'll end up OTKing with both, ideally. Because then you get 2 of these guys out, and then it really becomes an OTK. There's just no chance your opponent's going to be able to survive that. Spiral Grip could be decent. The only problem is that in order to get a special summon of this guy, you need to destroy a monster by battle. So basically what both these cards say is this one. We'll start with this one. You can equip it to any vanilla, which includes a token. It gains 500 attack. When the equipped monster destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can special summon 1 Phantasm Spiral Dragon from your hand, deck, or graveyard. Equip it with this card, then inflict 1,000 damage to your opponent. So you can see why this card could be used to OTK your opponent, depending on what you have on field. It could very well just be a 2-turn type of deal, so you could be like turn 3 and turn 4 type of thing. Or, sorry, turn 3, turn 5, rather, that type of thing. It's hard to say. There's so many different variants of like what could possibly happen. So yeah, this card is quite good, and everything is hard once on it, which is fine. Spiral Crash is the slightly better one because it works during the damage step, which is amazing because that stops a lot of cards from being able to work properly because it's during the damage step. So yeah, Phantasm Spiral Crash says equip only to a normal monster or a vanilla or a token, basically. If the equipped monster attacks a defense possession monster, inflict piercing battle damage to your opponent. This is very important, because when the equipped monster inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can special summon a Phantasm Spiral Dragon from hand, deck, or graveyard and equip it with this card. So, you can also change an attack position monster your opponent controls to defense, which is also quite good, because if your opponent has a swarmed board and the monster that you can switch to defense has 0 defense, well, that's basically like attacking them directly with Spiral Crash, which is pretty excellent for a monster that has 2,900 attack. That is quite powerful. So yeah, this card I think is the better one of the two, but I do think that both of them are equally good and equally useful. Depending on the situation, you might want one or the other. And because there's a handful of decks that do banish stuff face down, basically milling your deck, I play 2 of them just to be safe, because if I lose both of them, I basically lose my odds of being able to OTK in any situation, which is very unfortunate, because a lot of decks in this format play only like a few monsters at a time, if any, and especially in this deck, you're going to stun your opponent a fuck ton. So basically, they're not going to be able to realistically make like 4 monsters on field. They'll usually make like 1 or 2, usually a boss monster at best, and then they'll pass, right? Or they'll play like 2 smaller monsters that can still do some stuff, something like Traptrex, for instance, which is a pretty problematic matchup. It's pretty difficult because of the amount of traps that we're playing, as you can tell. So it's kind of a weird one, but it's okay. We make do with what we can. Right. So, with all that being said, those are the equip spells. So these 3 things are pretty potent parts of the matchup. You effectively want to get a token as many times as possible so you can search Phantasm Spiral cards. And we haven't even gotten to the good ones yet that you typically search on your opponent's turn. You also have Megalo Smasher X, which is your way to normal summon, so yeah, you could get the search if you don't end up having your opponent doing anything. Then we obviously have 2 Phantasm Spiral Dragons. You don't really want 3 because you don't want it in your hand, although if you're Spikezillion, you're bound to draw it, and we'll probably see that in testing. Now, let's talk about the Field Spell Searchers, and the reason why I'm playing 3 different ones. The reason why is because going first, I technically have 3 different viable ways to basically Ash Bait, but not only that. Actually, no, it wouldn't even be Ash Bait for this one. But you could Ash Bait from Metaverse and from Terraforming in particular, which could be quite good, because you could just add an additional field spell from your deck to your hand if you already drew it, which is excellent. Then you can get your search off the Phantasm City off the rip, because they know that you want the field spell more than anything else. The field spell is the most important part. Most people let terraformings go through, but for your matchup, they're most likely not going to want to do that, because the field spell does so much for this deck that most people will probably just Ash a terraforming, which is perfectly fine. So this is a great way to bait Ash in this case. With Metaverse, same idea. However, the only problem with Metaverse is that you really gotta hope you get the dice roll. But if you're really good at dice rolling, you'll likely go first and it'll be fine. And this is just basically a desperate measure. This is just second terraforming, all things considered, because you'll just activate from your deck on draw phase, pretty much. You'll probably just do this straight on draw phase. So, yeah. You could wait and see if they're gonna go evenly, but the thing is if they go evenly, like, you most likely set, like, a bunch of cards, not just this card. So it's kind of a problem either way anyway. So, yeah, I don't know. I think, when it comes to the matchup, I think it's easier to just go draw phase Metaverse, for the most part, and just go from there. So, yeah. Metaverse is quite good. Demise of the Land is fairly good if you're going second, because a lot of decks in this format special summon in the middle of your combo. They interrupt your combo, and this deck doesn't really combo per se, but your opponent will obviously love to special summon, and one of them is Traptrex, right? And Traptrex can't really do anything about Demise of the Land, realistically. Most of the time they're just doing holes, which is very fine, because, you know, they can't really flip a token over, so they can't Floodgate Trap Hole it. They could, like, pop the token, I guess, with another different hole, and then Floodgate Trap Hole your Megalo Smasher, but that's fine, because as long as I normal summoned, I should be able to search, unless I negate the summon. So, for the most part, Demise of the Land is quite good, because it, at the very least, puts your opponent in a very awkward position, where you will get the field spell regardless, no matter what, and it's unashable, because it's activating directly from the deck, and not adding to hand in any way, which is really, really nice. So I do like Demise of the Land quite a lot. I've thought about playing instead, just playing 2 Demise of the Land instead of 1 Metaverse, but I've decided to go with either or because there are a few matchups where people might just normal summon and then swing because they have the ability to do that without really having to worry about special summoning in any way. So this is sort of like a backup strat is having Metaverse there just in case. So yeah, that is that. We have 3 extra and 1 prosperity. Now, why would we not want 3 prosperity? The reason is actually because it halves our attack damage, or halves the opponent's battle damage this turn. Not only that, but also Extrav drawing us cards is slightly more important than prosperity finding us the right card to play. We don't worry about the extra deck almost at all. The only thing that we would like to use the extra deck for is a sidecar, which is Fist of the Unrivaled Tenyi. But other than that, we almost don't care at all about the extra deck for the most part. There's like very few situations where you actually care about the extra deck in any reasonable way. We do have a way to go into access code off of our links, but like, why would we want to? Like, we'll never make this many monsters as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you could just keep making tokens if your opponent keeps fucking up, but there's such a small chance that's gonna reasonably happen. I would just not even worry about it. They're just here to be here. The Link Spider is here because sometimes you might be able to go into Link 2, scare your opponent a little bit. Like, you could go into Phoenix, see if they'll flip up a card, because then you'll hopefully use your token so that they will use an effect and then you get to special another token, right? It's just one of those things. But in addition to that, you could also do Stealth Kraken if you happen to get 2 Megalos Masters on your field. Stealth Kraken is pretty good. I mean, it's not like the best card, but you could do certain shenanigans with Stealth Kraken that make it work, right? And then for Fist of the Unrivaled Tenyi, we have Ultimate Dragons and we have Master of Oz. And then if we, for some odd reason, have a matchup where someone asks us to send from extra deck to graveyard, we have Entus here so that we could potentially pop some cards. You might even be able to play this at 3, honestly, and just get rid of like Firewall and Access Code or whatever you want, really. But yeah, I just decided to put it at 1 because I don't think that comes up very often at all anyway, so I don't really care. So yeah, that's that, right? Now, what have we not talked about? So we talked about Prospe a little bit. We talked about Extrav. So Extrav, we want to draw 2 ideally, right? So they ash us, that's fine. Again, I want to ash bait them as soon as possible so that we can actually do the proper thing and get Pacifis off. Now, unfortunately, because of Extrav, I won't be able to get the search off Pacifist this turn if I do this in the same turn as Extrav. But if I'm Extraving, it's probably because I'm desperate anyway. So most of the time, if I end up drawing Floodgates, that's perfectly fine anyway. So it's fine. So yeah, next is let's talk about Sea Stealth 2. So Sea Stealth 2 is also Umi while it's on the field or in the graveyard. However, it's not a field spell, which is quite nice. It makes your water monsters untargetable by non-water monster effects, which, honestly, it comes up, but it doesn't come up that often. It comes up mostly in branded matchup, for the most part. And I guess, like, Cash, but Cash will probably just banish the field spell rather than, you know, the monsters, because they can just do whatever they want. So, for the most part, this is for branded, not really for anything else. That's why it's at 1. I'm not that interested in having this on field, although this is a great way to get a monster on field during the battle phase that you can abuse with Sea Stealth attack, which we'll get to shortly. We have 2 unexpected dies. You could honestly have 3. In the build that I play IRL, I actually play 1 Fossil Dig and 2 unexpected die. And the reason I play 1 Fossil Dig is for those small situations where special summoning might trigger an opponent's card so that I could just normal summon. There are times where I've noticed it. For instance, I think there's a hole that says special summon and not normal summon. So that is part of the reason why. Now, obviously, most of the cards in the trap hole line don't really care, regardless of what way you summon. But yeah, Fossil Dig can be kind of useful for those small situations. Yeah, so that's that. Now let's get into the traps. So we have triple evenly. I mean, who doesn't this format? I mean, some people might not main it, but I think you should be maining it. It's insane. Even if you go first, who cares? You could honestly set this thing, see what they do, and if they do something silly, right, you could go evenly matched if they removed everything on your board except for evenly. If you get really lucky, you could do that. You could also just wait, keep it in your hand, and then go turn 3, flip evenly or pop evenly from your hand, and then make your opponent cry if they didn't kill you somehow, right? Metaverse I already talked about. Now we'll talk about these two cards. So these two cards are the other searchable cards. These are by far the best cards to search on your opponent's turn. So basically these cards say that if you control a vanilla, minimum 1, target a card your opponent controls, destroy it. Or with this one, it is imperm, so it targets a monster, negates its effects. Also, it loses 1,000 attack and defense. So that's simultaneous, those two effects technically, because this is also... It's not simultaneous theoretically because it does state 1,000 attack and defense drop first, but because it says also, it technically resolves at the same time, which is incredibly important because there's a ton of different cards that may negate those types of things, so it's something to be wary of. But on the other hand, it's also just quite good because in things like Damage Step, you can just pop this puppy, and or I think it's Battle Step. Sorry, not Damage Step. I think Battle Step, which is the first step of after attack declaration. So yeah, it's quite powerful. This card, so that's pretty good, right? And what's crazy about both these cards is that you can activate either of these from your hand if you have Umi on the field. And guess what? We have 4 Umis in our deck, so that's pretty crazy. So yeah, quite good cards here. These are great. Also, they're both not once per turn, which is just bonkers. So yeah, this is how the deck controls your opponent very, very hard. It kind of stun locks them with Spiral Power. It also makes it so that they drop attack and defense, so they'll swing and die because Megalo Smasher's so big, and the token's also so big. They're both 2,000 attack, 2,000 defense for the token's case, but that doesn't really matter because you're usually going to go into attack anyway if you have this card in your hand. So it is kind of telling, I guess, whether or not you have Spiral Power by the way you summon the token. But I guess you'll search it most likely anyway if you summon the token on your opponent's turn. So who cares? You know, who gives a shit at the end of the day? Let's talk about Sea Stealth Attack. Sea Stealth Attack is the thing that pairs really well with Sea Stealth 2. So when this card's activated, you can activate Umi from your hand to graveyard. That doesn't come up ever, but like, okay, fine. While Umi's on the field, this face-up card gains these effects. Once per turn, you can banish 1 water monster you control until the end phase. This is important. This turn, face-up spells or traps you control cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects, even if this card leaves the field. So basically, this has the Lord of the Heavenly Prison effect. However, what's powerful about this card is that you banish for cost, and it's until the end phase, which is insanity. So the reason why this is important is so that if your opponent tries to pop your monster in any way, or tries to pop your back row, you will banish the monster for cost, so that it gets you out of that situation. It kind of works like similarly, not perfectly like, but similarly to Time Thief Redoer, where the monster is going to come back, and it's not considered a special summon, it's called a return, which is sort of different. It's weird how it works. But that's quite powerful. This is a very, very scary card. If you have both this and Pacifis, your opponent should probably concede, because it's most likely that you also have Skill Drain on the field. And Skill Drain is Skill Drain. We all know what this does. I don't think I have to tell you what this does. This card's insane. But then the second effect is quite powerful of this card as well. At the start of the damage step, if your water monster, whose original level is 5 or higher, battles an opponent's monster, guess what the token level is? Destroy that opponent's monster. So the token is level 8. In addition to that, this thing is also level 8. So that works. It is the El Shaddai Construct effect on start of the damage step, which is excellent. There are a few times where it's not great. For instance, if you equip one of those monsters with one of the equip spells, and then you see Stealth, unfortunately, you will not receive anything out of that. You will not be doing battle damage. You will not be destroying the monster by battle. You're destroying the monster by card effect. So unfortunately, it does kind of mess with that a little bit. However, the pros just outweigh the cons in every single situation. I just don't know what to tell you. It's such a good card. So definitely putting it at 3 because I quite like this card. It could go down to 2, but it's hard to say. Mostly I would do it just to get the field spell more often, so I would get more Demise lands or metaverses or whatever, right? And then summon limits here, because you only really summon like once or twice a turn anyway. Very rarely do you summon 3 times in one turn, And if you do, I mean, the good thing some of them is not on the field at that time because you'll just shred them anyway. That's an OTK most likely, right? So yeah, summon limit is quite powerful in this matchup and in this format. This format's very combo heavy right now. There's a lot of summoning going on. It slows trap tricks by a decent amount. However, if Sarah's on field, it's not necessarily GG's. It's just really difficult to get her off the field. You kind of have to skip your battle phases very often, just to get her out of there before you continue forward, because otherwise they just gain too much advantage and it's just very depressing. So yeah, Sarah's a bit of a problem, right? So that is the main deck. I know we went through it for quite a while. It has already been 20 minutes in the video, but I will quickly go over the side deck, and then we'll get into actual combos and stuff. You'll get a good idea of what hands look like. So we have Lancia. I mean, it's Castira format. Ash. I mean, it's Castira format. Gamma Seal. I mean, it's pretty good because you can use it with Gozen match, which I have 3 of in the side as well. And what's really nice about that is that very few decks are running water monsters. And what's even crazier about that is that Castira gets completely shit on by that because Gamma Seal is a level 8, right? So it has no Xyz synergy, and the only water is Ogre, and Ogre's not very good. It searches through the trap, but it doesn't really do much, and it's also a 1-of in the deck, so it's very unlikely that they get it in their hand unless they search it in some way, or if they use Birth and get it from Graveyard or whatever. So yeah, like for cash, this is a great combo. So very good card to side in addition to Lancia. So that's an 8-card side, which I know is very, very, very gross, but I promise you it's worth it. It's quite good. For Trap Trick, so I'm actually running Droplet. And the reason why I'm running Droplet is so that if I do want to make plays this turn, and I don't want to worry about Sarah, I could Droplet Sarah, in addition to Dropletting Rafflesia, right? Because it doesn't target, which is great, because that means I can hit both Sarah and Rafflesia, and very commonly people are playing both. And in addition to that, Rafflesia is actually 25, so in order to make her slightly smaller, we use this so that she's 1250, and that therefore we can use the equip spells to be able to gain advantage and possibly OTK on that same turn if we can manage to make it happen. It's hard to say. And with Droplet, we can usually just get rid of cards that we don't really have to worry about with them as much. For instance, if they summoned after I flip Skill Drain, those monsters are affected by Skill Drain, but if I flip Skill Drain after they are summoned, then those monsters are unaffected still. So it's kind of a workaround for that, is that I Droplet, get rid of Skill Drain, and then choose those monsters after Resolution. So this is quite a good way to get rid of them and go about your day. It's not perfect, but it's quite good because they are affected by spells, and because they're unaffected by traps. And most of my deck is basically invalidated, so it's one way to get around them and also gain quite a bit of an advantage ourselves. Right. And then finally we have one more, which is Fist the Unrivaled Tenyi, which is just funny because it can technically work. It makes our monster vanilla, which is great because that counts towards our Pacifis effects, right? And people will try to destroy this card by card effect very commonly. Mind you, there is some decks that banish, right? But a handful of decks, like Sword Soul, for example, will play something like Barone, and Barone will try to pop it, and then you can get a Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, which is very hard for them to get over once you have things like Skill Drain on the field as well after the fact. Like, for instance, if they pop Fist of the Unrivaled Tenyi and don't pop Skill Drain, which is on field, they go in for the 50-50 and loss of 50-50. I have Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon now. Then I can flip Skill Drain, and now they're just stuck. What are they gonna? They're not gonna gain any attack. They might try to negate it if it's Barone, and like I haven't used an effect yet. Or Barone might just negate Fist the Unrivaled Tenyi, which would be even funnier, because then Skill Drain could just get flipped up and be like, haha, you've been invalidated, right? There's like little nuances like that make this a very, very funny situation. So this card's quite interesting. I'm more interested in this card than most of the other cards in this deck. Furthermore, it's also nice that it's a counter trap, which is really interesting. I might try to play 3 of it at some point, but it's right now I like it at 1. So yeah, this is the main deck. It is time to test. Now, as per usual, my luck is usually really bad with these, so we're gonna find out together if we cry looking at this. Oh, I don't think I saved it actually. I did some stuff actually. I made some edits. Oh, I think it fixed it. Think so? Pretty sure. Pretty sure this is right. Okay, that's fine. Right, so let's go solo mode, and let's go with the Phantasm Spiral deck. Let's see what our first hand looks like. Okay. This is a pretty rough hand going first. Going second, this could be okay. But going first, this is quite rough. The one thing that's nice is that we can set Demise of the Land, normal summon a monster, or we can go Unexpected Die here, bait Ash. Let's say they didn't get Ash out of that. We get a special of a Megalo Smasher, right? And then set this card as well, and we pass, right? Then the opponent goes on, does their thing. They special summon, like, let's say they did, like, Branded Opening, right? It's, like, Branded matchup, for instance. Or if it's main phase, they go Kashtira, Fenrir. We flip up Demise of the Land, and we get our field spell, right? So now they can't Ash that. We're going to activate it, right? So now we have it, okay? They do their thing, whatever. So what's interesting is that if you chain Demise of the Land to a card, or let's say Pacifis gets on field, in the midst of a chain link, right? Pacifis is like chain link 2 or something. Actually, I won't even get into that. It's kind of weird. I think, like, with Metaverse, it's quite interesting, because I think if Metaverse is like chain link 3 and you activate Pacifis, anything that was in the chain link that was from your opponent, I think it counts towards Pacifist's effect, because the effect resolved, which is very interesting. Yeah, so anyway, let's assume that your opponent just straight up does an effect after Pacifist has been activated and it's resolved, right? So we special token, right? Now we get to search. At this point, we didn't even need this thing on field anymore. But yeah, so now we search, and here we're gonna search for a Spiral Power, right? So if we search for Spiral Power, we'll probably put the token in attack, so that we kind of bait the opponent to go for a swing into either of these things. And let's say that their monster is like 2900 attack, right? We go Spiral Power, target a monster that's swinging into the token, for instance, and that monster will die. And that's very sad for them. Also, then another person could swing with a 2200 monster, for example. I could go Spiral Power effect, banish this card from my graveyard. This thing is a second effect, where I can activate equip spells from either graveyard or hand. In this case, from hand. We equip it to this guy, and now he's going to be 2500 attack. The opponent's going to swing into it because it's still, battle step, and then they die. And we go Spiral Grip effect, special summon Phantasm Spiral Dragon. I think they take 1000 burn off that as well. Yeah. So yeah, pretty broken card. So now this will be on the Phantasm Spiral Dragon now, so this will be equipped to that. And you can see where I'm going, right? You see how the wheels are turning. And then they'll set a card and try to pass. On end phase, they'll go Spiral Battle, pop the card, right? So it's a Dryden, basically. Then we draw. Oh, baby. That's hot, right? Because then now we have Skill Drain on the next turn. So that's insanity, right? So it does work. It's just like, it depends on what your opponent's doing. If your opponent's just messing around, it's really tough. This hand is disgusting. So we go Terraforming. We would go Extrav first. So, yeah, Extrav. Whoops. So we go Extrav, right? Banish 6. I'm gonna draw 2. Okay, sick. Wow, this got insane now. So now we go Terraforming. Terraforming will give us this. And then we go Unexpected Die. Summon. Fish. Well, dinosaur, whatever. It's a fish, let's be honest. And then this effect. Search. We'll search for... if it's Trap Tricks, for example, we'll go for Spiral Battle usually. Because Spiral Power is kind of worthless against Trap Tricks. The Spiral Battle is quite good because it kind of forces them, if they set a Rafflesia, for example, we can go ahead and pop it with Spiral Battle. And even if they flip it and try to special summon it, it'll still pop it no matter what on resolution. So I could care less. At worst, Sarah's on field already. Because then Sarah will activate her effect because of Spiral Battle. So 4-1 out for that one. Yeah, it's pretty rough. Another thing that's notable about Droplet that I forgot to mention as well is that it also makes them affected by trap effects now, which is pretty funny. So yeah. But at this point, right, we have everything we want. Just, we can just set this, set this, set this, or we could just like set these two if we want. Maybe set this too if we really wanted to, right? Because then we can make it. We could possibly do 2 searches in one turn if we can make it work. That'd be pretty sweet, right? And then yeah, with that we would pass. Now they're under summon limit skill drain, right? If they try to special summon and I special token, and then they try to pop the field spell, I just optimize the land because they special summon this turn. We get a second Pacifis. We go on with our day, right? So it's pretty powerful. You can see what's happening here, and we still have this in our hand that we can activate from hand, which is pretty incredible. So yeah, there's a lot going on with this deck that is really nuanced and interesting. Wow, that'd be pretty funny if I drew a third one. Yeah, so you get the idea, right? This is a very powerful control deck that I would highly recommend in this format. I actually think it's quite fun to play. I think it's really interesting. Against Trap Tricks, it's a very like brain power type game. Where your opponent and you have to really think about every small play. I think that's very interesting, because otherwise it's kind of boring when you're playing a combo deck and you're getting trap tricked on. You get kind of frustrated. But when it's 2 different control stun decks, mostly control in this case because of trap tricks, it's very interesting because you have every little eggshell and you're hoping not to step on a single one. So it's quite interesting. I think it's a really interesting format, this format. I in general, I think this is a great format, and this is a great deck for this format, in my opinion. Also very cheap. Like, if you already have your summon limits and skill drains, the actual, like, core of the archetype cards is, like, literally $20. I'm not even exaggerating. This is very cheap to make, very efficient, so thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be coming back with another deck profile pretty soon because I've been building a 3rd deck in this format that I think is quite fun. So stay tuned for that. Rate, comment, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you guys next time.